Okay, so we were talking a little bit about appropriate weight loss and what's the appropriate amount of weight loss in a week, and we decided that if you have 3,500 calories is 1 pound of fat, and so if you want to lose 1 pound in 1 week, you need to have a 500 calorie a day deficit, right? So how do we do that? The basics is pretty simple. We eat less and we exercise more. Um, Ideally, you'll achieve that deficit by a combination of the two, right? How many calories can you burn from exercise? Well, a really fit woman can burn 350 to 500 calories per hour, right? Really fit man, 500 to 600 per hour. And that's just with pretty vigorous activity, right? That's a pretty vigorous uh, exercise, right? So that's like running or jogging or riding a bike or cross country skiing, something like that. So if you're doing something like, say, yoga, which is maybe difficult but not quite the vigorous heart pumping type of workout that jogging is, you're probably only looking at 200 to 300 calories an hour, right, for non aerobic exercise, right? So what that means is you've got to do a lot of exercise, right? So enough to get a 500 calorie a day deficit. So ideally, if you reduce your calorie intake by just a few hundred calories a day, that means maybe just not having dessert, right? That means cutting soda out of your diet, something like that. Just that, and maybe an hour or so of vigorous exercise a day, you're probably going to lose weight. You're going to have that caloric deficit, right? So let's talk also a little bit about these diets. That you'll see people on these diets where they're like, oh, I lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks, okay, which that's a lot of weight. We talk about how 1 to 2 pounds per week is uh, an appropriate weight loss goal, and people say they're losing 15 pounds in 2 weeks. Well, it's just quite simply not possible to lose 15 pounds of body fat in 2 weeks, right? And let's look at the math behind that, okay? So let's say 15 pounds in 2 weeks, that's 14 pounds, or that's 14 days, 15 pounds. We'll just round it off. We'll round it off round to 1 pound per day, okay? So if we want to lose 1 pound of fat per day, to lose one pound per day equals a 3,500 calorie deficit, right? Okay, so let's say that we don't eat anything, right? We don't eat anything. Let's say this is me. This is this 80 kilogram person up here. So my basal metabolic rate, right, just doing nothing, just sitting around, is 1,920 calories a day, right? So I don't do anything. So if I don't do anything, any exercise all day, and let's say I don't eat a thing, I eat nothing all day. I drink hot water from a mug and take a gulp of air every time that I feel hungry, right? Which is going to make me very, very grumpy. I'm going to have a caloric deficit of about 2,000 calories a day, right? So I now, by not eating anything and just living, just existing, sitting on the couch all day, I burn 2,000 calories a day. That's still not near enough to burn 3,500 calories, a pound of fat in a single day, right? So where am I going to get that other 1,500 calories? Well, if I go out and I jog pretty hard for 3 hours, right? If I jog for 3 hours, I can burn 500 calories an hour, another 1,500 calories, right? So if I burn 1,500 calories from jogging, and then I 2,000 just by existing, and I don't eat anything at all, then I'll have my 3,500 calorie a day deficit, right? Right? So when you look at that, the only way that I'm going to lose 1 pound a day is by not eating anything all day and jogging for 3 hours. Now, how many days do you think you would be able to do that? And I would say not very many. Not very many. So when we look at those diets where people say they lose that kind of weight, it's impossible to lose that much fat. So where does the weight come from? Well, the first place that you're going to initially lose some weight is when you if you go on a starvation style diet, right? If you just cut out everything, you've seen crazy diets. There are grapefruit diets and tea diets, green tea diets, things like that, where you hardly eat anything. You're going to lose some fat, but you're also going to lose carbohydrate. Remember, you store carbohydrate in your muscles. You store carbohydrate in your liver, right? So weight loss on severe diets is often carbohydrate loss. Okay? And in addition to the carbohydrate loss, it's also water loss. Remember that when we talked about fat, water and fat don't mix. We talked about body composition. Your fat in your body is almost all there's almost no water in it, like less than 1% water. Whereas your carbohydrate, for every 1 gram of carbohydrate you store, you also store 4 grams of water, right? So when you first lose weight, you're just losing carbohydrates and water. And the minute that you eat some carbohydrates and get some water, you're going to replace that. So that's why these things do not work, right? So the whole basic premise of losing weight is you got to eat more. You got to eat less. You got to exercise more. You got to burn more calories than you take in. You have to have a negative energy balance. It's that simple. So your book talks a little bit more about how to lose weight healthily. I'd like you to review that. It talks about reasons why people seem to have decreased activity, and talking about how we sit more and move less, and we eat more than we used to. People tend to eat bigger portions. It's really hard to track those things, and it's hard to tell exactly how much each one of those things contributes to people being overweight and obese, but they definitely all contribute some. Just make sure and cover in your books on fad diets. Your book does a great rundown of any of those. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them on the forum. We've talked about how you measure energy. That's also in your book. That is mostly it. Make sure and read the extreme measures for extreme obesity. That's quite an interesting one, talking about liposuction and those sorts of things. Our next module has some information on binge eating and eating disorders and the female athlete triad, which is really important.